So what is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a news roundup video, and I haven't done one of these in a little while. We've been busy with some other things, which reminds me, if you haven't done so already, a bit of a shameless plug here. Check out my Peacemaker Season 2 official trailer breakdown. I also chuck in a bunch of San Diego Comic-Con DCU info in there. But also, the other day, I did a Metahuman mural breakdown. So the mural that appears in the Hall of Justice, would love to know your thoughts on that video, any theories, because we dive into quite a bit. But today, well, it's just going to be timestamped. There's quite a bit to talk about. Who knows if you're going to see a future Boba or not? I mean, I don't know anymore. Other than that, would appreciate a like rating on this video to just, help it out there in the algorithm a little bit. And of course, if you haven't subscribed already, well then maybe today is the day you'll consider subscribing, because I think you'll like it here. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we need to get into some Marvel breaking news, if you will, because we've just got a somewhat teaser at the new Spider-Man suit. And this really takes me back to covering the Spider-Man suits from, Far From Home. I mean, for those of you who go back over 6 years ago, aroundabouts there, as you're probably seeing on screen, man, here we are again. Now, obviously, this doesn't give us a crazy, good look at the suit overall, but one thing that instantly stands out about the Spider-Man Brand New Day suit is the raised webbing. It's also really cool, even though you can barely see it, that it seems that there's quite a larger Spider-Man logo on the suit. Obviously, we again don't have a full look at the suit, so I can't give my full thoughts on, oh my god, I love this suit so much. But it is a very good sign in how Tom Holland's Peter Parker, just like where things left off at the end of No Way Home. So the way things left off there, I loved it. Rundown apartment, struggling to pay rent, pretty much no history, making his own suit. This obviously does seem to be a bit of a different suit. I don't know if they're just going to pretend that, or maybe that other suit just got torn up and now he's got one with raised webbing. But I think it's safe to say that it's very encouraging. A lot of people are hyped about getting a good look at this. Now, on that subject, I don't know if the blessing and curse is going to happen and we're going to get an even better look, because what we do know right now is that they're filming in Glasgow to the point of where they've shut down near about 60, as in 60 roads, 60, and they're shooting a big action scene, which is reportedly rumored to be in the third act. Some of the set photos already showing tanks, where it looks like an Inner Demons logo is featured on one of the tanks. And, is this spelling out Mr. Negative? I mean, we already know Punisher's going to be in the movie. There's the rumors about Bruce Banner, Hulk. I mean, that's a whole other bag where, I'm going to try and be optimistic. And, I am looking forward to this movie. Don't get me wrong, but for those of you who've been here long enough, you know that I wanted a really point-of-view driven Spider-Man movie that didn't kind of feel ensemble-esque with its supporting cast. And with the ending of No Way Home, it felt like they were going to propel us into that, but now it's like, you got Punisher there. You got maybe a Hulk there. Who knows what else you got there? But, I'm not going to jump to conclusions. And that doesn't mean it wouldn't be entertaining anyway as a Spider-Man fan. It's just I have a certain preference to kind of go back to the storytelling execution of something like a Sam Raimi film or even a TASM film. But I digress. Getting back to what I was saying, they're apparently filming on the 3rd to the 5th of August. And this is from one of those pages that, they put up on streets saying and letting people know what's going on. 28th to the 31st of July is preparation days. But it is also being said that in other locations around the place that there could be some filming on August 1st in other locations. So what I guess I'm trying to say is we could get a full look at the suit today, maybe, because they're expecting for set photos to come out of the actual new suit and possibly Punisher and whatever the heck is going on in this big action scene. But we could be waiting a couple of days as well. If I don't cover that, because I absolutely do want to, I love Spider-Man, so it's something that I've also been saying I want to incorporate more into news roundups, is some more Marvel news. I know not everyone cares for it, but that's why these videos are time-stamped. Just know that I will get to it eventually. I am busy this weekend, but I had to get my thoughts out on this because obviously it's the first teaser of probably many to come. I think what I'm also intrigued about, beyond just obviously seeing the full look at this new suit, is what the heck's going on with some of these rumors of like the antagonists in the film. Like, is it going to be Hulk? If Mr. Negative, well, with the Inner Demon logo is in it, is he going to kind of make Hulk go crazy? And they're going to have to try and contain that situation. We're gonna have to wait and see. If you have any theories about that, by the way, I would love to hear it. We can dive into this even further in another video. But for now, let me know your thoughts on the very brief glimpse at the suit. For all I know, by the time you're watching this, maybe we have got a full look at the suit. But for now, these are my thoughts on the very up-close images of the raised webbing. But now back to past Boba. We had James Gunn, pretty active on threads, and when this user said, very solid advice, James, with him talking about, not giving in to, toxicity online, just don't interact with it, they continued to say, now that Superman is out the way and the press tour is finished, do you have any time to relax? And Gunn said, Peacemaker press and sequel writing. But since then, James Gunn did have to clarify because a lot of people were like, okay, wait, you're doing a direct sequel as well as a somewhat sort of kind of sequel that you mentioned previously? But Gunn here says, yes, sorry, this is the same movie that he was on about previously. Superman has a major role. It's not Superman 2. So really, all in all, this just kind of harkens back to our original conversations and discussions that we've been having with how it could just be a continuation of the Justice Gang. We've got the Hall of Justice really kicking into gear, a little whiles away from the Justice League as of right now, but that could expand into so many things. That can involve characters like Superman with this somewhat kind of sort of sequel thing. Gunn did say to Josh Horowitz, we've already gone over this in the sense that when Josh Horowitz asked him, is it, world's finest? Gunn was just shaking his head like this, but I've already offered my thoughts in the previous video that I wouldn't still take that as a denial just because he kept going like this, because if he went like this or said yes, well, then he would have quite simply confirmed that the sequel to Superman would be a world's finest. So I can't wait to find out more details about that. Now, that might be a long way away, but any theories or just desires, top wants that you would want out of a sequel that Gunn is talking about here, that he's writing, let me know down in the comments below. Do you want a world's finest? Do you want something like a modern day all-star squadron kind of thing as we got into in the Metahuman mural breakdown? I feel like there's a lot to look forward to here. Now, a little while ago, I think back in June, we covered how there was that quote of Gunn saying a DCU movie was killed. Now, this interview, I believe, came out, it was published on July 15th, but this has been making the rounds a little bit just with regards to people still wondering exactly what this project is about with a new quote that Gunn has said here. So when he says, like, everything has to fit and work together, I've seen it happen again and again, and it irritates the hell out of me, and he's just talking about, movies that are being put out there when they're not really baked enough. He goes on to say, I just stopped, we had a screenplay that, a movie that was greenlit. We got a second draft and third draft, and it just wasn't changing. It wasn't getting better. It was staying in the same place. And I said, we can't make this film. We can't. It's not good. We know it's not good. Just because we have a good director attached and a good screenwriter, it doesn't mean the script is working. Everyone is going to be upset at the end of this. It's going to come out, the movie's not going to be good, director's going to look bad, screenwriter's going to look bad, and we're going to look bad. So I don't want to have this. We're not going to make the movie. And so we killed it. So I know that quote sounds familiar because it is very similar to the one he told to the Rolling Stone back in June where he says, yeah, we just killed a project. Everybody wanted to make the movie. It was greenlit, ready to go. Basically the same kind of quote, but people are still wondering what that is. And, at this point, I would have to say it's the authority with more press with James Gunn, especially going on to Peacemaker now. And we're going to get into some of that press a little bit later on. It came up in a certain interview when they were going through the projects, and I was like, oh yeah, we're doing this, yeah, we're doing that, yeah, we're doing this, and then he mentioned the authority, and Gunn was like, hey, oh, well, and then they kind of like burst out laughing because it was a bit awkward but funny at the same time. So it kind of does feel like the authority to me. Now, interestingly, something that I don't think has been pointed out a lot is that in both of these quotes, he never said that it was a DCU movie. He just said that we killed a project, the screenplay wasn't ready, but everyone wanted to make it. It just wasn't good enough. But he never strictly said it was a DCU one. The only reason I'm saying that is because we know Constantine Constantine 2 has had a couple of drafts by this point. We've even had the guy who plays Lucifer, forgive me, I can't remember the name, but he was saying he spoke to Keanu Reeves, and Keanu Reeves really isn't happy with where it's at. He wanted it to be more of a character kind of movie rather than a John Constantine spectacle movie. So maybe, you could easily apply what James Gunn said, especially in that first quote, to killing Constantine 2 if they just can't figure it out. But you could also apply it to The Authority, because Gunn, unlike Sergeant Rock, where he says that's still moving along, but it's not moving along with Luca Guadagnino. He said that recently, confirmed it to Josh Horowitz. This isn't Sergeant Rock. As for the Deathstroke and Bane movie, we found out that around about a month ago, a draft had been handed in. I don't think it's that one. We know it's not Teen Titans. We're going to get onto that in a second with what news we've had about that. So every other movie, like Swamp Thing, that's miles away from being properly worked on with a script. So as for DCU movies, the only candidate in my mind would really be The Authority, and they just couldn't really get it off the ground. If they kept trying to make The Authority work and they couldn't, then yeah, like I rather you don't put something out that is just gonna harm the DC Studios brand, because, as a DC fan here, I want the movies to be good, and it's as simple as that. Now, we also had a story recently which kind of made, a lot of people in a knee-jerk reaction go like, eh? Me included, by the way, because, as DC Film News is reporting here with what happened, James Gunn says Ana Nogueira's Teen Titans script doesn't exist. She's been on Wonder Woman for a while. Now, you guys know me, like, big fan of Ana Nogueira going on to Wonder Woman. I'm not saying necessarily I'm a big fan of Ana Nogueira's writing, because I haven't seen Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, so I can't possibly know that, but behind the scenes, we're hearing amazing things about her. She then went on to Teen Titans, and now she's gone on to Wonder Woman, as that is being, fast-tracked as a bit of a priority. So when, you first see Gunn just simply reply, by the way, you look at the reply, and we have this user saying, James, have you read the script for Ana Nogueira's Teen Titans? And he's just straight up like, it doesn't exist, full stop. She's been on Wonder Woman for a while. It's kind of like, wait, what? What do you mean? We know it exists, but this is where, you have to get into the kind of semantics of it, and where technically, if a script isn't done or completed, then does that Teen Titans script exist as a script of Teen Titans? I guess in a certain point of view, it doesn't exist, but obviously with sometimes the way Gunn phrases things, especially with the internet, quite often, I think we're all aware at this point, and with what we're going to get into later on with the DCU Batman, the Batman situation, it can lead to 1,000 different avenues and roads to go down with interpretation. So without jumping through all the hoops and going through every reply that Gunn made, because some of them just further complicated it, I will just jump to the finish line and say that the main reply that he gave is where he replied here saying, I don't understand. We said that the script's not finished there. I asked Anna to move to Wonder Woman to finish that first, and she did. So essentially, we literally knew that Ana Nogueira, as reported by The Hollywood Reporter quite a while back now, was working on Titans. Those script pages have been kind of put on the shelf, not abandoned, but hey, we're going to continue working on that for some time, and she's been working on Wonder Woman ever since, because as with recent news, we've heard that they want to make that a little bit more of a priority, which I think made, like, many fans pretty happy. And overall here, my takeaway is I understand, as much as I, really want to see a Titans movie in the DCU, and I've made a whole video about it, by the way. I recommend checking it out. It's something like how I think the Titans will be or can be adapted in the DCU, so check that out as a bonus video if you want to. But I'm really, really gunning for that project. I really want it to happen, but at the same time, doesn't need to happen like anytime, like soon. Doesn't need to be prioritized, is the way to put it. No, not really. Now, Titans is arguably a project that can still release before The Brave and the Bold, if that, did get some steam with Ana Nogueira's script, but I think at the end of the day, they're kind of waiting to figure out what the heck they're really doing with the overall DCU Batman plan, how and when that project comes into effect with the script that's being worked on, and heavily, closely watched by James Gunn, with him saying himself that he's working closely with the writer. Now, again, I want to stress that obviously the Titans movie can come out before or after, but maybe they're like, hey, given that we're going to be introduced to the Bat family to some extent in the Brave and the Bold movie, I mean, Damian's in it, so, at least Dick Grayson should be in it, and maybe one or two others. Maybe it'd be more fitting to see a Titans movie come out afterwards. So why is Ana Nogueira writing a project that might come out after the Brave and the Bold when we could get her and her talents with how well she wrote Supergirl for us kind of thing on another female-led project, Wonder Woman, which many fans want to see some kind of news with as soon as possible, because that's been probably one of Gunn's most asked questions ever since January of 2023. What the heck is going on with Wonder Woman? Sure, we heard about Paradise Lost, but other than that, it's been like a dust bowl with Wonder Woman. So either way, long story short, I'm fine with this, as long as it still happens, though. I'll be a bit upset, actually, if, something like DCU Titans, fell by the wayside, like The Authority, where they had to kill it. Now, do I think that will happen? Again, hopefully not, because Ana Nogueira, or while it wasn't a finished script as of February, the Titans script, she is a writer that is doing really good stuff for them. They're very, very happy with her, which is why she got the gig of, writing the Teen Titans script and now Wonder Woman. So hopefully she can just pick up where she left off when the time comes. Now back to Superman here. We have Superman becoming the first solo Superman film to surpass $300 million at the domestic box office. Now, this also comes after the recent news of some other stories of note, such as Superman from Forbes here with the headline, Superman just beat Man of Steel at the box office, with a few catches. Now, this is where I do want to entertain both sides, because I basically agree with what Forbes is saying. So as they acknowledge here, it's now grossed more than Man of Steel at the box office. So Man of Steel earned $291 million domestically back in 2013. And as of today, Superman, Gunn's Superman has passed that total. But there are some caveats here, some important ones, I'd argue. The article continues saying, first, of course, you can play the inflation game, and inflation has been bad over the last decade. $291 million back in 2013 would equal $407 million today. And I mean, I don't think it's wholly wrong to consider that, even though many box office charts ignore that the vast majority of the time. And I would agree with that. Like, I know some people like say, with inflation, and, they get into that, like, rabbit hole. It is true. It can't really be denied if you take inflation into account, which is literally a real thing. Money in 2013 is not the same as what it is today. And when you make that adjustment, it's, it does kind of like, make a little bit of a difference here with Superman beating the domestic box office of Man of Steel. It kind of did, but if you actually adjust for what the money's worth, then did it really? Now, Forbes go on to say that second, there's the rather important story that Superman is drawing a poor international audience in the context of the wider industry, and given that this ratio is likely to continue, it seems pretty unlikely that Superman is going to top the Man of Steel's $670 million overall. And I think, again, that is a very understandable thing to say. Like, Gunn's Superman at this point in time is not doing insanely well in the international box office. It's doing really well domestically, but I just thought it'd be interesting to read that out to kind of, again, like, I think both sides of that conversation, while, it's doing well, and what I've got into for what DC Studios needed to get out of Superman, this is still a success in terms of a way to start your universe and get the goodwill back from the public to go and see your future DC movies, because Gunn's Superman is both critically acclaimed, the audience are giving it really high scores. The majority of people really like Superman, and that was the main goal. Plus, it's still going to break even and maybe have, a few dozen $1 million to spare of profit. Obviously, not nearly as much profit as they want, but you get the overall picture package there. For their first outing, Warner Brothers had a lot of clawing back to do, and they have succeeded in that baseline being established for the new DCU. But at the same time, you can't ignore how Man of Steel performed. And when you make that direct comparison, Superman, there again, as Forbes puts it, there's a couple of caveats there. Now, Superman, as of Box Office Mojo, states that it's now hit 510 million as of when I'm making this video. We've even got the global box office page on Twitter saying this Wednesday, Superman made 3 million, around the same as Monday, as we estimated yesterday, confirming it is going to have a great weekend with 13 to 15 million domestically, eyeing a 370 to 400 million domestic total, potentially outgrowing the Batman's domestic total, which would be, again, domestically really, really quite impressive. So overall, Superman still got its legs. We've still got premium video on demand sales whenever they come into effect. I remember for Black Adam, major trades were reporting that should eye another 25 to 35 million for that movie. So for Superman, with how well that's doing domestically, premium video on demand sales, that's going to factor in tens of more millions of dollars. Then eventually you're going to have Blu-ray sales. So overall, all I'm saying is, not to mention merchandising and stuff, Superman will be doing absolutely just fine revenue-wise. And the main goal is, as what I've been going on about, putting one foot forward with the DCU to both critical and fan acclaim. Moving on to some Lantern stuff. So we have Ulrich Thompson here, having wrapped his scenes as Sinestro, posting, "Bye for now, Sinestro. I'll keep one side for later." Now, I know we've already talked about this casting, but, when you see the photo that he posted and he's done half a shave here, I can really see Sinestro here, especially, obviously, with the context of in this universe, Hal Jordan is already a Lantern legend. So, Sinestro, once upon a time being his mentor, he would have been around for a long time and he's probably imprisoned somewhere at this point, and Hal might have to go to him Hannibal Lecter style to figure out what the deeper, darker, ancient horror thing is going on here. But just look at the guy. I can see a little bit of that tash there. Even his eyebrows, I can imagine, with the makeup and stuff for the show. Such a good Sinestro look. Now, carrying on with Lanterns here, we had this photo posted of Paul Ben Victor getting his body scanned. I'm very excited about this character in particular and the possible larger repercussions of this. Because, well, the fact that he's getting his body scanned is interesting because, it's like, okay, you could be implementing this character in the 3D model, but jumping to it and what we spoke about when he was first cast, if you guys remember this article back in April from Deadline, where they said that Ben Victor will play Antan, and just a code name, but it's being described for now that he's an extraterrestrial devoted to exposing the truth and exacting vengeance against those who wronged his people. Consumed by a deep and unrelenting hatred for the law, he is determined to deliver justice on his own terms. Now, what happened to Atrocitus? Well, he blames the Guardians for destroying his planet with the Manhunters a long, long time ago now. Now, with what we discussed in that video, I'm not going to repeat everything I said, but we're kind of getting into an Apocalyptic Horseman from Nexus Point News was also getting into some theory territory that we went over, just with Abin Sur looking into the Blackest Night prophecy and using Atrocitus at the time to lead him to the truth of that, except, as we know, he died, the ring then went to Hal, and Atrocitus could have been around about the place ever since then, even potentially going on to influence William Mason, played by Garrett Dillahunt in Lanterns, to possibly be William Hand. And what do we know about William Mason, or should I say Garrett Dillahunt for Lanterns? Well, we know that he's had a whole freaking body mold done, the kind of thing that they do when they're building a suit for you. So, I don't think that was just to, give him a new denim jacket or whatever. So again, I don't feel super confident about all this stuff, like getting into William Hand, Black Hand, and obviously I don't expect Blackest Night to come to full fruition right in the Lantern show, right at the beginning, basically, of the DCU, because this will be coming out sometime early-ish, spring-ish, I guess, 2026. We're not going to have, all these characters floating around, Black Lantern style, but it could be the very, very early days, leading back to, again, Atrocitus, leading back to Abin Sur. Mighty interesting stuff here. I cannot wait until we learn more. To me, just seeing this, he's gotta be Atrocitus, man. And that just makes you think how nuts this show could be. I know we've only had one photo of them just walking down the street. A very, as we've heard, with what this show's being inspired by, true detective vibe in that shot. But with Guy Gardner in it, with Porna Jagannathan basically mentioning Guardians. You know, Guardians are going to probably contact Hal to go after and bring on rookie John Stewart. We know that Sinestro's in it. We know that this is probably Atrocitus. Like, it's looking... I just can't wait to learn more, and hopefully that won't be kind of too far away. I suspect we could learn more at New York Comic Con in October. Now, we've also had James Gunn confirm that there will be surprise cameos from both past and future DC projects in Peacemaker Season 2. So we've already covered how, okay, there's going to be a big cameo. Maybe could that be Lex Luthor? Could it be even Superman himself? Like, who knows? But there's going to be more. Now, interestingly, we also had Gunn say that the mention of Bloodsport in Peacemaker Season 1, Episode 1 remains canon to the DCU. So could we see some previous characters from the Suicide Squad pop up in Peacemaker Season 2? I know loads of people would love to see Idris Elba again as Bloodsport, maybe Ratcatcher, if they can find a relevant way to put them in a scene that just, you know, not, as Gunn says, he doesn't like the whole cameo porn thing, doing it for the sake of it, but if you can do it in like a world-building kind of way, I think that would be pretty sweet. So I guess I want to turn it around on you guys. Like, who would you want to see in Peacemaker Season 2 pop up from the past, and also, you know, some future DC projects? That's interesting. So James Gunn, in an interview with Straw Hat Goofy, this is actually what we mentioned earlier, when they were going through all the DC projects that were happening, and, you know, the kind of, you know, we're like, okay, maybe the Authority isn't happening so much, but they also spoke about something that got me quite excited, because on a similar note to what we were just talking about with characters in Peacemaker Season 2, with Creature Commandos, Gunn said, dude, I just met with Dean on Creature Commandos Season 2, a real big priority for us. People are going to be whacked out by all the superheroes we're adding to the show. So he was really talking about that with quite a bit of passion. We already had a little bit of a tease at the end of Creature Commandos Season 1, you know, a new kind of version of G.I. Robot. We had King Shark in there, among others. But now, just, you know, with me recently getting into the Metahuman mural, granted that a lot of those characters are in the past, you know, it's still just really invigorated me with a renewed, like, not a renewed passion, but just the potential, the excitement of the potential of just how many heroes are out there, and how cool it could be to see even more of them in Creature Commandos, because I do believe that show has so much potential with the missions that they can go on. Who knows what the plot will be exactly with Season 2, but it could really take the Bride and the other characters to really interesting new places, and feature some characters that we could very well see in live action. Now, lastly, for this video, we have the whole bloody DCU Batman, the Batman, Robert Pattinson's Batman, merging with the DCU conversation flare up again recently. And I will say that all while I will always maintain that this was never the intent of the Batverse, the more I read stuff like this come out from James Gunn, the more I do believe that because of certain circumstances that could be at play, maybe, or while I don't think this should happen, will I hate if it happens? No, but I'm, you know my thoughts on this by now. It does feel like just maybe the door has been left ajar. Now, I feel all kinds of ways about this, but let's first get into what was said. So James Gunn was asked about, you know, will Robert Pattinson's Batman be in the DCU? And the Batman Saga News is saying, you know, once again, Gunn says that he's not in the DCU, but with the full quote here, I've said it before, we've talked about it before, but it's not what's happening right now. You know, listen, everything's in flux, so we'll figure out what we're doing next. Gunn has explicitly said before, like in replies, like you know I've got all the receipts. Like if I could do a whole tapestry of like clear shutdowns of this, where he's been asked, for example, will Batman in the DCU be a new actor or Pattinson's? And Gunn literally replied, new actor. Like, period. new actor, like finito, right? But no, it's not finito because this always carries on. But sometimes he gives answers like this, which is where I give complete credence to people who still speculate about it in this angle. Because if he wanted to completely shut it down, he could have said the quote in the same way. I've said it before. We've talked about it before. But it's not what's happening. We are casting a brand new actor for Batman in the DCU. Or while we're working on that right now, Matt is doing his Batman Part 2. That's an Elseworld story. The DCU Batman, again, as I've said before, will be a brand new actor. He doesn't say that. I do want to make that clear. No matter what side you are on, some of you may be getting wound up with me saying this, but you guys know how I feel about this. But I like to try and go about this as level-headed as I can. He quite simply said, I've said it before, we've talked about it before, but it's not what's happening right now. Why say right now? Now, this could just be like some loose words that just came out of his mouth, right? And he maybe didn't mean for us to like dig into this the way we are, and many people are. But then he, goes and say, listen, everything's in flux. We all know what that means. When something's in flux, it's like, it's a seeming like progressive unfolding thing. Some things could be arguably subject to change as things are in flux. It's something we're figuring out. That's, things are in flux. So we'll figure out what we're doing next. So you could also just take that as, we're still working on DC Batman. We're going to figure out what we're doing next. But it was in relation to the very question of, is Pattinson's Batman in the DCU? So, look, without me going round in circles there, I do think, if you took that as blunt as it's written on paper or on the web page here, I can't really argue with people if they want to say technically that could be Gunn leaving the door ajar, because I have offered an alternative reality where he could have just shut it down so damn decisively with his words. But he didn't do that. He says it's not what's happening right now. Now, there are many other people speculating out there, and I do want to take this into account. So we have this user here point out something that I think is quite logical, but it does need to be stressed. It's just speculation. And the reason why I want to entertain this is just because, quite simply, of what Gunn has said. Like, sometimes he gives quite clear and concise answers, but there has been answers like this and quotes like this, which, I don't think it could be argued with in how you can interpret that as, look, I don't really want to be fully transparent right now, but maybe the door is slightly ajar for something maybe like that happening. Either way, this user says, I have a theory. I think Matt is not sure if he's going to do the Batman 3 and wrote the Batman 2 in such a way where it could be the end of his crime saga. Things have been clearly very hard on him lately. Writing these films has been harder than he expected. I don't know if he necessarily is ready to devote the next 7 years of his life towards writing and directing this franchise. So part 2 could very well be the end, and if it is, with him out the way, I think he'd be fine leaving Pattinson's Batman on Gunn's hands. I would debate that, but, anyway, the main thing he always wanted was seeing his crime saga through. If he manages to wrap it up with part 2, then he'd be fine with it. However, that does put James Gunn in an extremely awkward situation. He either waits for part 2 to come out to see if Matt Reeves wants to do a part 3 or not, and if he does, then he'll have wasted a lot of time he could have used in making The Brave and the Bold. Or he decides to move forward with The Brave and the Bold before the Batman 2, Matt ends up deciding he's not doing 3 anyway, and James ends up regretting not folding Robert Pattinson's Batman in. Even though, obviously, we have to ask Robert Pattinson about this as well if he wants to do something like that. The user goes on to say, being stuck in this situation where he'd have to pick between these scenarios is one that'd understandably be annoying, and it explained why James's demeanor towards Batman questions isn't that enthusiastic and why things are in flux, and he's still moving forward with The Brave and the Bold right now, etc. So I'm not saying I agree with every aspect of the way this user wrote it out, but I feel like the idea of this conversation being had might not be the furthest thing away from the real truth behind the scenes, and where, the reason why maybe James Gunn said things are in flux is because, quite literally, with a rough kind of example of what I just read out there, maybe, you could change some things up, but let's just say things were maybe in that kind of way, and, things would still be kind of being figured out, right? Especially if you want to chuck into account, let's just say Matt Reeves is still going through some personal things. He might just be like, I'm going to go hard with Batman Part 2, do I really want to devote X amount of years after that to doing part 3? Again, I want to stress, maybe he's like, absolutely, I will. If part 2 does well in the box office and we're greenlit for a sequel, I will do part 3. That is totally on the table. I want to reassure people there that this is just speculation, and that could be the reality like it has always been intended to be, right? The Batman part 1, part 2, part 3. But there is clearly something we've been picking up on in the past year or two, and it's taken a very long time to get here. We've heard some rumors about why that could be. And, you know, I'm just saying there would be some logic in exploring this kind of conversation where, you know, I could imagine a world where Matt Reeves kind of ends it at part 2. James Gunn kind of has to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to do then? Do I try and get Robert Pattinson on board? Would he be interested in that? Do I wait to see if Matt Reeves finishes the Batman part 2 and he gets back to me saying whether he wants to do part 3 or not? But if I do that, then I can't do the Brave and the Bold until a certain time. And if he ends up saying, no, I'm not going to do part 3 because of personal reasons or something else, then I should have really started Brave and the Bold production sometime 2026 or 2027. So, like, you know, it is a weird, like, I feel like this is why things could be in flux. I know this is a big ramble, but things could be in flux in that sense, because ultimately, all while the vision was true a few years ago and was probably maintained true with all those times Gunn shut things down about Pattinson's Batman being a possibility of the DCU, and where he's like, no, Reeves is Elseworlds, we're doing DCU Batman. Like, I'm not going to be ignorant enough to say, like, well, things could technically change for reasons like what we're getting into right now. So, I don't know. All of that ramble was predicated off of Gunn's comment where, you know, what I will say is I find it irritating as a fan that there are clear shutdowns. You know, I will say that there have been clear shutdowns that can't be argued with, where you would have felt like it's been put to bed. But the reason why this is still being talked about is because we have new quotes like this from James Gunn. The reason why it didn't end at James Gunn decisively shutting it down by saying DC Batman is quite literally a new actor and the other dozen receipts that are just like that is because there are quotes that say, but it's not what's happening right now, as the most present day quote, and everything's in flux. That, you know, you as soon as you hear that for the first time, you're like, that's not like clear cut, is it? That's kind of door ajar, leaving a door ajar a little bit. So we're going to have to wait and see. All I know, though, for the time being, is that we're getting the Batman Part 2. It's going to be very true to Matt Reeves' vision. But who knows where things could go in the future. And with that being said, let me know your thoughts on every single story in today's video. If you got this far, would greatly appreciate if you left a like rating. Again, I know you hear this all the time from every channel you watch, but it really does help out. It helps the kind of, not the analytics, but the algorithm push this video out there to more people who may hop on board. If you are brand new here, why not consider subscribing? I mean, you're watching to this point, so double check that red button. I'd really appreciate that. But ladies and gentlemen, I am going to love you and leave you. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.